good afternoon. We know this is always a tough ride. You may prefer to have a nap, but now we thought it's really a very special and precious moment to share with you about our journal. I think it's also the moment to consider that we could not organize this conference without the support of the Macau government. That's why the Ricci Institute can be so generous. And therefore, for me, it's even more an obligation to consider how can we use our resources really in an effective way. And just to be happy with the few who have the chance to be here, I think it's not enough. So therefore, we have invested a lot in the journal and also in online education. That's the way what we want to cooperate with University of St. Joseph. We have already started, but by next year this should be fully fledged. I also want to say it's not just that since I took over we had this idea of publishing. We owe a lot to our founding fathers, and just this was Chinese Cross Currents was the journal also we have supported, and what especially Father Yves Gavu was editing, was an important instrument really to increase our impact. But we can share, and so I'm very also glad that Father Menar is here, as he's a very strong supporter of the Ricci Institute. You may have seen his last publication about Shangchuan as the door to China, and also Guangzhou Yuminjing, the Zhongwai Wenhua Jiaoliu. Just he's extremely prolific in his publication. And Father Menar and I actually wanted to continue with the Chinese cross currents. And we can share with among us that we were firstly disappointed if the provincial said no, we could not continue. We should first reflect how to continue this business of a journal. And actually, I must say, we spoke about obedience. In this case, the provincial was right. So we had to reflect about a focus. If we do that, it's a lot of work, a lot of money, especially dealing with all these egos. That's the most difficult part. So what is now we want to present the focus, what we have on comparative spirituality. What I already want to share, it's a term I owe to an American friend, Michael Sasso, as we don't want to impose our Christian faith. So we want to say, in the style of Dominus Jesus, we are in dialogue with other religions, therefore we compare spiritualities in the broader framework of the exchange between Europe and China. That's how we can understand, especially as the founding father Raga wanted it, especially with Buddhism and Taoism. And then we said moral leadership is something we urgently need, and what the missionaries brought, social innovation. So therefore I'm so glad to have, we have Dennis Mccann, also comrade in arms. It's many years, or sometimes we call each other, considering the challenges, the Sancho and the Don Quixote on the journey.
Who is Sancho?
You can figure out that who is the Sancho, kind of sometimes with rightly grumbling. Then also it's great to work together with Mark Pufpaff, and really also all many things, but also to this time to Father Menar, that number of Chinese among us, that was also thanks to his pushing. So that's our plan, and feel any time if you are not happy what we are saying, we want to present this also kind of brand our ideas also with online courses maybe it's the first time we succeed or may succeed in drawing together Catholic education, Jesuit education. Anytime you don't agree with us or we are not clear, just interrupt and let us know. So that's the plan for this hour. And also I want to underline one thing is very serious now, as also Father Menar and I worked in China since over 20 years. There is really a risk that the academic freedom has evaporated altogether. We could not have this journal in mainland China. We have a legal journal with a book number, the Kanghao, we have that in Macau. I can decide as an editor, this is not possible in the mainland for this kind of journal. So it is very precious to have this trust, also in a sense for also the government. We want to use that also properly. So therefore, let us go quickly through what we have as a chance, as an invitation for you all. So presenting the profile of this journal, then Dennis will say something about the whole procedure of submission. We have in mind always this deadline. November 20th will be the 5th issue, will be out of Macau Ricci Institute Journal. And so how this procedure, how we proceed for the next steps of the journal. And now up to Mark, who will present with our bread.
Thanks, everybody. So the intention here, if you'll give me your patience, is just to give you a broad idea of the profile of the journal. Many of you are already involved in it. We're at our 4th issue. So this is just to reinforce what you already know and introduce whatever may be lacking in terms of the profile of the journal, what we hope to accomplish with it. So the general context in which the journal came to be is in this encounter between the East and the West. Macau being a privileged place of that encounter, it's an appropriate place to continue this dialogue. So the journal is meant to facilitate that. Reinforcing that point, the concept of the journal is to provide a gateway for the exchange of spiritualities, of experiences, of resources, in the context of articles and thought leadership and scholarship. Our ambition, and we all have to have an ambition, is to be Macau's leading international journal for key opinion leaders in China and the West. So, the narrative of the journal, the general purpose of it, is kind of contextualized by our belief, our role, and then what we're doing. So our belief goes back to that initial concept that Macau is a privileged place of encounter between the East and the West. So those from the West who feel they have something to contribute to that dialogue are encouraged to participate. And those from the East, in like manner, are encouraged to participate. So the journal is really conceived as this meeting point between scholars, practitioners, to exchange experience, to exchange resources, research, in view of facilitating mutual respect and discovering solutions towards the common good. Our role in this process, as indicated, is through the journal, but also more broadly through the Macau Ricci Institute as an institute. So the journal is the product by which this kind of dialogue or exchange is facilitated. The institute is the kind of permanent place in Macau for there to be this coming and going of ideas and encounter. So getting a little bit more practical, so our commitment for the journal, and these commitments are all underway, is one, to build Chinese scholarship, two, to challenge business leaders. So a note on that is the articles themselves are supposed to be relatable. They're supposed to be actionable in different ways, so that someone who reads them will have takeaways that they can apply in their professional or their personal lives. And then engage key opinion leaders, so this is more of an outward-facing promotional commitment to get people engaged so that they can increase the reach of the journal and increase its potential influence for continuing the encounter previously described. The channels, this is more on the, internal side of things, but really we're developing a way to reach out and include as many people in this encounter as possible. It's remarkable what technology can do, both communications technology, transportation technology. That we can have such an international conference is incredible. And then to be able to take the fruits of this conference and put them into a publication that not only all of us can read and keep, but that we can share and distribute with those who may find value in it. And so the channels are just ways to increase kind of the sphere of influence of the journal. And that has everything to do with the Jesuit network, Chinese scholars, international scholars, local key opinion leaders, regional key opinion leaders, and business leaders. And the channels correspond to some degree to the three platforms. Comparative spirituality, there's going to be a whole group of people, right, that we can identify and seek to engage with in that area. Moral leadership, social innovation, likewise. So the chosen platforms for the journal and the way we try to bring them together in each issue really allows for significant reach. And so this is a process that is ongoing and that we're working on ourselves and would challenge and invite you to participate in as well. This is kind of what it all looks like put together. The general frame of the brand and all of its various elements.
Okay. Any reaction or critical remark, not just to the last picture? Okay, then I will give the floor to Dennis. I really think I want to pay homage to Dennis and somebody who is not here, Mike Thompson. It's great to work really with you. Have a broad knowledge, insight. It's just really an honor and a pleasure. I also must say, I can make a confession, it's challenging to balance, one, the rigor, sometimes both Mike and Dennis, what we want, of course, we cannot lower our quality, and on the other hand, also as an editor, I want to be encouraging. So the present, especially Anglo-Saxon culture, is maybe discouraging just negative feedback all the time. And so even established scholars I have to console and try it again. They're nice people. So just we want to get the best out of it. So I mean, sometimes it is dilemma. So, and I want to also hammer out, despite this, of course, call for academic rigor, to encourage, especially Chinese young scholars, because we have also, as coming from Switzerland and hearing my accent, we have obviously a handicap, and other journals, for instance, the prestigious long-range planning journal in London, they have a whole staff to beef up the poor English of non-English speakers. But so it's really great to have you, Dennis, so share your insights also about the whole procedure.
Right, thank you. Well,
Maybe I should start this then by saying, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. So, I don't mean to be critical. But, you know, as you say, Sancho is a complainer, so I try to fulfill my role. But we are absolutely committed to particularly to facilitating the development of Chinese scholars, but then the rest of the community as well in support and that's knowledgeable about that. And so we really do go the extra mile. If you get critical feedback from us, you think of it as I used to tell my students, that's a sign, the red marks are a sign of love on their papers. And so, and you would get, from me, you would get a lot of them, which I would consider a lot of love. So I hope you would take it in the same way, but it means that we're committed to you. And we'll do anything we can to help bring you along. I mean, we understand that for most of the authors that will be writing for our journal, English is at best their second or third or sometimes fourth language, okay? So we have a process. Now, to get down to the nitty-gritty of it, you know, if those of you who are here are thinking about, I don't know what this is doing, are thinking about publishing in our journal, and I hope you will, okay? Because issue 6, we're planning the stage right now, is very much related to the papers, you know, and we're hoping to get a sufficient number of good papers from this conference. And my goodness, I think we've already seen that there's an enormous amount of strength and challenge in what we've seen so far. So I'm very confident that issue number 6 will be really a good one for us, okay? But what will happen is this. As Stephan said, issue number 5, we hope to put to bed, that is, to have to the point of camera ready so that we can, A, get the translations done for the Chinese, because the issues are bilingual, if you've seen a copy of our thing. And we hope that around November the 20th that we will have that process for issue 5 completely wrapped up. In fact, I think we can get there earlier than that. However, on November the 20th, the same thing, you know, then the floor is open. And so what we would like to do, if at all possible, if you can have your papers back to us for consideration, for submission, November 20th would be the deadline on that. Obviously, in emergency situations, we can try to be a little bit more flexible about it, but that would be our hope to start working on 6 as of November the 20th, okay? With a publication, we expect no later than June of 2020, okay? Now, what is the process? Well, first of all, you've already seen there is an invitation in the journal, you know, at the end, you know, which is to give you some sense of the procedure, some highlights. First of all, what we would like from you is to try, first of all, to observe word count in English. And by word count in English, the limit we've stated, although we're somewhat flexible about this, is 3,000 words. But within that limitation, we're talking about text. Over and above that might be your bibliography. You know, it gives us some wiggle room on that. But if you try to aim for 3,000, say, you know, I mean, sometimes we get wonderful papers. I'm working on one right now for 5. You know, what we were submitted, what was given to me was 6,500 words. Well, guess what that means? That means I have to get out my old Occam's razor and start cutting the thing down so it would get down to size. And again, the blood on the floor from doing that kind of cutting should be a sign of love, because we're really working hard to get you in there. So first thing is word count. The second thing is the APA guidelines. If you have not seen them yet, we have our own shortened version of the American Psychological Association guidelines, which are standard in the United States for academic publication. We would like you to use those and to format your essay and your references according to those guidelines before we get it. Because if that's not done by you, it will delay our process and leave us at least one step removed from getting you peer reviewed. Then we would submit it to the peer review committee, and the sooner that that's done, the better. So there will be at least 3 reviewers at this. Normally, it's the 2 co-editors, myself and Mike Thompson, as well as Father Stephan. We'll all take a good look at this. One thing I can tell you is that if you've got a topic that we don't feel particularly expert in, and that sometimes happens, we will submit it to an external reviewer who does have the qualifications. I've had that happen to me. You know, I've been teaching comparative religious ethics for maybe 35 years, but nevertheless, the editorial decision was that if Mccann is going to be writing on Islamic business ethics, as I did in the last issue, we need an independent review. They don't love me anymore. No, it's not. It is, again, a sign of love. So this was sent out to a very famous Jesuit, Gerhard Bering, and he looked it over and gave me some feedback, and I learned a lot from that, and the article became that much stronger because of it. So if we need an external review because we feel it is beyond our specific competencies to do it, we will do so. We really mean to hold and improve the standard of peer review. Once the peer reviews have been done, then you will get feedback, probably in the form of a letter from me, if I'm the managing editor for that issue, trying to outline the responses have been, and then to work with you a strategy for responding to whatever the feedback has been. And again, this is not like purgatory or going to confession or you think of your most difficult activity. You know, this is meant to be a constructive process and a sign of our investment in you. So, you know, don't misunderstand our motives, at least. So then you will be given a specific deadline, you know, and once we get it back from you, it might even, we may have to go through 2 or 3 rounds of this before we're finished. But I think those authors and some of you in this room have been through the process, and I believe that those folks who have already published with us would indicate that this has been a very, in the end, the outcome, you know, was a very happy one. So that's what we're looking for. If we receive them by November 20th, I would imagine that we would try to be on track, that is to have the English texts in order so that they could be gone to the translator, and Thierry will say something about that, that we would have this at least by Chinese New Year. So we want to work focused, get it done, get those English texts in good shape. If we've got photographs and pictures and other representations to go along with it, get those all collected properly. If we can get it done on or around the beginning of the Chinese New Year, and that way it will give us plenty of time to meet our June deadline for printed and digital publication. But I'd like to turn it over now at this point to Thierry, who can say something about Chinese translations, which is extraordinarily, given our mission. What Thierry does in helping us with the translations is an enormously important part of our process.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Yes, only a few words. I mean, I think this journal is a very good combination of a very already senior scholar and also young scholar. And also is a good mix of Westerner and also Asian and Chinese scholar. And so I think it should be this kind of aiming to that balance. And so, of course, I mean, writing in Chinese is more difficult also to write into English. And so I think, what has been done by the journal is really a tremendous help to the young Chinese scholar And even one of my students, also PhD students, I mean, is going to next month to, in fact, to have his formal doctoral defense at the University. He submitted also a paper to the journal, and so it was in English, and with Dennis and Mac Thompson, and we spent a lot of time and also to improve. And so I think it's a very good help but to improve an article, both on the point of view of the academic standard in terms of academic level, and also in terms of course of the English language. And I should also emphasize that in mainland China today we face a lot of restriction in terms of publication. Since the last 2 years, it has been more and more difficult in mainland China to publish any topic related to religion. And so many students in fact used in the past to submit a paper on religion, and they could publish it in some university journals. We call that Xuepa. So every university has a Xuepa, or this kind of journals. But now those papers are turned down by the editor. They do not publish in mainland China any paper on linked to religion. It is not only targeting Christianity, but also Buddhism or Taoism or Islam, of course. So any religion is too sensitive topic. So now it's very difficult in mainland China and for our students to publish. And so I think a journal like the Journal of the Ricci Institute is very interesting for a young Chinese scholar in mainland China, because it gives them a kind of a platform where they can publish a very strong paper, and with the help of the editorial committee, but to improve the paper, and that they have a chance to publish it in both languages, in English and in Chinese. And so I think it's very, very valuable, especially because in China many content now are not possible to be published. So also I think the other advantage of a journal is it is an online journal. So of course there is the paper, but the paper edition I think is only 500 copies, it's quite limited. But the advantage of the online is that it is ongoing edition. I mean, I look at the paper of Dennis, and I spotted perhaps 2 or 3 mistakes, but so it's going to be so with the online it's possible to edit and to make a change very quickly, and so it is that somehow the paper is kind of living, and that is also being enhanced, improved with the online edition. So in terms of translation, I think there are 2 ways of going. I mean, one, of course, most of the paper I think are submitted first into English and after translated into Chinese. But also there could be also the possibility also to have I mean, a Chinese paper, and of course we need to see how to do with the editorial committee to evaluate, and also to see how it can be translated into English. So to make it somehow more possible also for a Chinese scholar. But so far, most of the paper, I think I should say all of them, were first written in English and after they were translated into Chinese. So of course, I mean, if we have Chinese writers, in fact, they can write into English, and once the English text is already set, through the editorial committee, we have already set and fixed the English version. After, the English scholar, of course, could himself do the Chinese version out of his English. I think it would be quite easy to do it. And of course, we will check also the Chinese to see if there is no misprinting or characters. So I think, again, I think it is a very good platform of exchange between mainland scholars, I mean Chinese scholars from Hong Kong, Macau, and also scholars from the West. And so And again, I mean, this online thing, I think that is a really good strength, that really it is available, and so you can send the link to anyone in the world, and so they can download it. And the good news is that the website of the Ricci Macau is open even on China. It's not like a Google or Facebook, which are blocked, but Macau Ricci website is accessible. Yes.
Thank you, Terry. So we had already the promising start that we had some papers originally in Chinese, but we definitely want to increase that. So give you a bit overview about the next step. So yes, if you have any colleague you know who is interested in this topic of contemplation, mission, martyrdom, most welcome also to submit it to us before this deadline of November 20th. Then remember this discussion we had in the morning. We already plan to have the symposium next year kind of tuned to initiative of Pope Francis, economics, finance according to the common good. That was his kind of push. So there will be a major conference in March in Assisi, but we want to pick up this this kind of idea, following up, of course, Laudato Si and like the heartblood of Pope Francis. And in this context, some, of course, reminded us our also then duty as Sinological Institute in the year after to have that focused on this publication of the Acta Precinensia, focused on the kind of conflict, the rights conflict. So we claim that we have just published the second volume in cooperation with the Ricci Institute San Francisco. Next year the third, and then conclude with the fourth year, so that's a bit the broad perspective. So this is the challenge to kind of reach out to Chinese scholars, and I think that's what we really get this feedback. They are so happy that they have kind of this space of liberty. Of course, we don't abuse that. We know there are also some limits of this liberty. And there is another major challenge, is marketing of the journal. So as we cannot be happy just to be a small group, how to increase this kind of readership.